Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you're having a good evening. We are back today, and today's topic is elitism. That's right, elitism. Um, is any community immune from it? Well, I would propose that no community is immune from it, and we need to be on constant watch for it. Joining me today, we have our resident Canuckistani from the Soviet state of Ontario. Dale, say hello, Dale.
Good day, everyone. I'm coming to you live from the icy northern lands of Northrend, by which I mean Montreal. And just to correct you, not Ontario,
Oh,
Quebec.
sorry,
Yeah.
Quebec.
Isn't it the
So,
same?
My apologies.
no, you would be very careful not to say that and be overheard by someone in Quebec.
Listen, it's all
They're
it's all Ontario, okay? The
they
entire
are very
country.
much rivals. But yes, coming to you live from Quebec. So hello, everybody.
And also joining us, we have our wonderful resident Serbian and apparently new on the ground reporter, Mali. Say hello, Mali.
Hello, hello. I'm back again.
Here I go again on my own. Okay. Uh I shouldn't sing not live. That's no good. Um so there's been a lot of things that have happened this week. Um I I haven't shared it very widely, but I did get in a vehicular collision yesterday, not with another vehicle, but with a deer. I was on my way up
Mm.
to Wisconsin, and uh, about 60 miles into my trip, I saw two deer off in the median between the two sides of the highway. And I slowed down to about 30 miles per hour to let them move over, to cross the
They
highway.
they moved
And,
over into the other life.
well, one of them did. And it wasn't a fun time because I did not end the deer's life on impact. The damage to my truck was very minimal. We're talking just some scratches on the front of the hood, a couple cracks around the wheel well. It threw the steering column off balance slightly, and it cracked the driver's side headlight, but only the container for the headlight. It didn't damage anything else functionally other than putting the steering column out of alignment. Um so it did not die on impact, and I had to put it down because that's what you do when an animal cannot survive anymore. You put it out of its misery.
All right.
Did you
And
eat it?
speaking, huh?
Did you eat it?
No, no. I don't have a license in the state to hunt, and an officer actually saw me uh, shoot it.
Hmm.
Um, Hunting for game or hunting for food, you have to be licensed.
Right.
Could you
And
just told them?
we're talking about Iowa here. You have to be licensed to hunt.
Yes.
Outrageous.
Yeah,
Well,
you could have
the
just told them that the deer was assaulting you. You know, it was coming right for us,
well
South Park, style,
the
and we had to shoot it,
the
or
the
you would have died.
I don't think she was carrying serious enough firepower for it to be coming right for us.
It was going for a boating accident and we prevented it. The president should like
okay,
send a
listen.
award.
We are nowhere near water. Okay. We are nowhere near water that serious. I mean, we've got the
Yeah.
Cedar River that runs down or the Mississippi River that runs down the side of Iowa, but that's it. And
Um, did
we
the
were still a good 40 miles away from that.
you mentioned that a police officer saw you put it down. Did he say anything about it, or was it just you
Well,
there and observed it?
he had seen the incident, and he saw me put it down, and the first words out of his mouth when he came up to me was, "You really carry a gun in your truck?"
The fuck?
Yeah, of course I do. Um,
Mm.
I'm like, uh, you carry a gun in your car. I mean, it doesn't matter that he's law enforcement. The simple fact of the matter is, yes, I carry a gun. Many people carry a gun, and a lot. If truckers ever hear this, it is not illegal to carry a firearm in a commercial vehicle. It is, however, dependent on company policy.
Mm. Is this even in states where there are much more gun grabby?
You know, we're talking about federal law here,
Oh, right.
uh, because everything uh, that surrounds trucking is controlled by the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Association, the FMCSA. They get to come out with the regulations on what is and is not legal to do with and in your truck because you are a commercial vehicle. And they have very clearly said it is up to the states within which you are driving in as to what laws you are subject to.
I see. Um,
So
and
when it
this.
when it comes to guns in a commercial vehicle, it's the same as guns in a car in whatever state you're in.
Hmm, I see. Um, and this officer, did was he one of those em- empty stare type of cops, or like and I'm not sure if you know, but you know that empty cop stare I'm referring to?
Yes.
Was he one of them?
No.
Uh,
What is the empty cop stare?
it's hard to describe. You'll see it if you watch a lot of auditing videos.
Ah,
It's the one where they're just not listening and they're not interested in listening to anything you've had to say. And it's the
so like
stare they
the
give while you're it's the stare they give while you're explaining them your rights.
is it
And
like
they
the video we watched where the guy got injured by two guys in the hospital?
it's I'd say it's a bit different. I can send you some videos of it later if you want to see that the empty cop stare.
All right.
But so was he then at least that cop more less of a tyrant?
Yes, he was less of a tyrant. Yeah, I mean, he didn't really complain about anything. He knew I wasn't putting the deer down so that I could eat it. I wasn't hunting. Uh,
Mm,
he was just kind of baffled that I carried a firearm in my truck. And
mm,
you know, I don't so much blame him because there are a lot of truckers that think it's illegal.
really?
Oh yeah, because a lot of these motor carrier companies, these mega carriers like Swift and Schneider and TMC, they tell you it's illegal, but it's
Mm,
not. It's just against their company policy.
all right.
But they say it's illegal so that they don't get any grief when uh they're asked, "Hey, can I carry my gun in my truck?" No, it's illegal.
Mm,
Kind of
yeah.
pushing off the responsibility of the company um to the federal government, but the federal government isn't responsible for that.
Yeah, from my experience at least, I know this is anecdotal, but I don't think I've ever seen a left wing trucker.
Oh, I've seen plenty.
Like, oh,
Um, did you did you ever listen to Angry Monkey on
no.
YouTube? Um, so when Google Hangouts was still the thing to live stream on YouTube,
Hmm.
um, 2016, 2017, 2018, a few people came onto my radar, one of them being Angry Monkey and uh, his co-host. I can't remember his co-host's name, but the dude started his own live stream show,
Hmm.
separate from uh, the Angry Monkey stream, and I actually had a debate with a leftist trucker when it came to when it came to politics and driving truck, that sort of thing.
All right. Hmm. I'm surprised. 'Cause, yeah, a lot of maybe it's just I'm in a bubble, but yeah, a lot of the truckers I know are either centrist or center right or full on right wing.
Let's see here. So, we are going to pull up our first little bit of discussion today. We have Mike Cernovich saying the Sig Sauer P320 is still the finest semi automatic handgun in mass production. Well, I know plenty of people that will agree with that. I know a lot more that will disagree with that.
Hmm.
Um,
Oh,
now,
first, would you say that the Sig Sauer P320 is still, if not the best, is still a really good handgun, but just not
it
the best? Or do you think they'd say no, it's like a shitty handgun?
it is a very nice handgun, but it is at times plagued with problems.
Hmm.
There when the P320 first came out, uh, it had some drop safety issues. If you hit
Hmm.
the back of the slide at a 45-degree angle from the top,
Hmm.
the striker would release from the fire control unit and
Oh,
actually discharge around.
that's not good.
So they had a voluntary recall, and any models after they determined that a recall was needed were manufactured with uh, the new specifications to combat that drop safe issue. Um, there have been issues, uh, such as fatigue on the grip module, and when firing a round uh, at a what'll happen is at a diagonal angle from where the back of the fire control unit is seated inside the grip module. The grip module will crack right there where the fire control unit meets the grip module and crack completely diagonally uh, from that point until just next to the the uh, 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 the takedown lever
Hmm.
for the P320. Um, I should pull up a picture. So Sig P320. Um, okay, so we've got that, and let's open that. Nope. Is that not? There we go. Um, let's see. Visit there. Go back to this. Okay. So this is the 6-hour P320.
Right.
Now, I wonder if I can zoom in on this. No, I cannot. But right here, where this safety lever is, you can see my cursor, right?
Yes.
Okay. Right where the fire control lever is, just behind it, where these slide serrations are, the fire control unit actually meets the P3, the grip module. And what'll happen is after uh, several hundred or thousand rounds, the fatigue on the grip module will cause, or the fatigue caused to the grip module will eventually fail right down a diagonal line until about this point.
Damn.
Right next to the takedown lever, which is right here. Um, Now this can be caused by several different things. Anyone in the 3D printing community understands a bit uh, about fatigues on plastics and uh, and what happens to plastic under certain temperatures and certain environmental conditions. Um, so when it comes to that, I I had put out feelers and I never really got an answer on this. I'm interested to find out what polymer these grip modules are made with, because you don't see things like this with, say, a Glock. And
Right.
I'm not hating on the P320 because I have one myself. I also have a Glock. I've also printed several frames for a Glock. Um, Glock itself uses a carbon fiber reinforced polymer, and it's you have to have very specific equipment, but these are all uh, injection molded, and you inject them into a titanium or a, not titanium, aluminum die, an aluminum mold, and the polymer quickly cools down, and then you release it from the mold, and out comes this wonderful frame. But when you're working with plastics, they can expand and they can contract depending on the humidity and the weather outside. You know, the heat. Um, Hotter polymers, or the hotter the polymer is, the more it expands. So when you put a polymer through uh, cycles of heating up and cooling off and heating up and cooling off, eventually there will be fatigue. But
Mhm.
the uh, the carbon fiber reinforced polymers, not so much, because you have to inject it at a much higher temperature than most other plastics.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, we're talking uh, the 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 print nozzle, or the heater block on a 3D printer, if you're using something like PLA plus, um, you generally print around 190 to 200 degrees Celsius, depending on how fast you're trying to extrude the material onto the print surface. Um, and I know for a matter of fact that you have to get uh, the polymer that Glock uses to create their frames. It's much higher than 200 degrees Celsius. probably more around 300 to 320 degrees Celsius. Don't quote me on that, but I know it's around that area.
Right. And just to clarify for those who may not know, fatigue is it's basically just wear and tear, correct?
Correct.
Right.
But in fatigue, there are certain portions that are more susceptible to fatigue.
Hmm.
Thinner portions of a firearm frame are susceptible to fatigue. Fatigue occurs on parts that are put to use most often.
Right. And I assume also the ones that are most impacted by the actual, like, most force.
Yes. Now, this is nothing against SIG. I think the P320 is a wonderful firearm. It is very reliable. I think SIG just kind of cheaped out on their grip module. And if you do have a SIG P320 and this happens to you, grip modules are not expensive. They're 50, 60. I've seen up to $120 for custom grip modules, but functionally nothing changes because the fire control unit is the gun, not the grip, not the frame.
Yeah. Could you, in
Just
theory, swap it out for the Glock's version?
no. The the Glock is not uh modular.
Oh.
Uh, so I'll pull up uh, I'll pull up the FCU. So you can see on the screen, here's your slide, here's your grip module with a magazine inserted, but this nice little bronze thing right here,
Mhm.
this is the fire control unit. This is what contains all of the major parts that make the firearm function. You've got your takedown lever, you've got your trigger, you've got your slide stop, slide release, you've got your trigger disconnect, you've got your drop safety, you have uh I can't remember what exactly. I believe that's the trigger reset right here in the center at the top.
Mhm.
Um this in and of itself is the firearm. This one piece, and it can come out of the frame right here. All you have to do is take out the takedown lever after you've taken off the slide, and it quite literally just comes out of the frame. Whereas with a Glock, all of all of the major components required to make the weapon function are part of the frame.
I see. So if the P320 is not the best out of the mass-produced handguns, what would you say is the best mass-produced handgun on the market?
Uh Honestly, it's going to be a subjective answer.
Right.
Um because different people carry different things and no one is alike. Uh
Mhm.
I I every day carry my Glock 43X. It works for me. It's not the best gun around, I can admit that, but it is the best for me. Um
Right.
I have customized it for me. It operates for me. Some people uh like Mr. Brady Gray right here
Mm-hmm.
says that he likes staccato. And the staccato is a very nice firearm. It's a 1911 style firearm. Phoenix Ammunition right there says Glock 17. And someone responded to him, P320 and 10 millimeter is solid. Let's go. And now you get into the jokes about the drop safe issues of the P320. Drop the gun. It's a SIG. Okay, put it down slowly. And you've got people that agree, people that are bringing up the jokes.
Yeah.
But if we're talking about the best SIGs, like the best SIGs that or the best handguns that SIG has ever released,
Mm-hmm.
I'd say it's a toss up between the P365, which is this one on the right. Let me pull that back up. Oh, you can't see that. P365. Okay. The P365.
Mm-hmm.
It's very solid. It was the competitor to the well, it wasn't the competitor because Glock didn't release the 43X until after the P365 was released. But it was SIG's answer to the Glock 43, which was a 6+1 or a 7+1 handgun. And when I say 6 or 7+1, you've got one in the chamber and you've got
Mm-hmm.
the rest in the magazine.
Yeah.
Because the Sig Sauer, for being such a small gun, held uh, held 10 rounds in a flush fit magazine.
Right.
So Glock came out and responded to SIG with the P4 with the Glock 43X, which could hold 10 rounds, but it was the frame itself was much bigger, much longer.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of us that had Glock 43X were not satisfied, so we waited for Shield Arms to come out with their custom metal magazines, and now we have 15 round magazines in a 10 round gun.
Huh. That is useful.
And they also came out with mag extensions for those magazines, so I've got a bunch of 20 round magazines for my Glock 43X sitting around.
Hmm.
Let me pull this up. The Shield Arms S15 magazines.
And what about the Glock? You said Glock 43, I think was your main handgun. What
My
about that would you say makes it the ideal handgun for you?
mine is the 43X.
Oh, 43X.
Um, it's ideal for me because I didn't start using firearms until I joined the Marine Corps.
Mm-hmm.
And the grip angle of the M16 is very similar to the grip angle uh, of the Glock,
Mm-hmm.
uh, which I'm used to. So it was a much more natural fit for me. But
Right.
I can't argue that the grip angle of the P320 is also a bit more satisfying.
Mm.
The the problem with the P320 for me is the frame is just too big, even with the small frame.
Do you have any thoughts on this topic, Molly?
I don't know much about guns because I don't have guns here. And
Oh,
I do have one bit of information which will just mind blow you. If you wanted to buy a Glock in Serbia, probably like a Glock 17, you need $1,000 on top of the license that you need to yearly pay for.
of course.
That
How much
doesn't
is the
surprise me.
license, if you know?
I need to check really quickly, but I'm not sure. But I know it's expensive and it's not worth it.
Yeah, it's like, and just to put it into perspective for people, $1,000 is going to be like 3 months rent in Belgrade, which is it's very expensive for a
Yep.
simple Glock 17. Like most people don't have that kind of money to just
It's
buy a gun with.
it's as much as an engagement ring should be.
Yes,
That's expensive.
yes, it
I
is.
I wouldn't spend 3 months' salary on any firearm.
Yeah, and
Personally,
on top of that, like getting a pistol is harder than getting like an air rifle or a shotgun because like people are like, why do you need a pistol? No, you don't need that. You know, like it's really hard to get that,
Yeah.
and especially concealed carry, you need to have a life-threatening reason in
Mhm.
order to be able to get a permission for a concealed carry gun. Like you need to be certain that your life is in danger. You know?
Oh, and a bit of a fun fact about that. Back when I was visiting Molly in Belgrade, we actually had a revolver with us, but for the longest time we thought it was just a cap gun. So we were just going around with what we thought was a cap gun was an actual legit revolver, and like uh not practicing ideal gun safety with it. Though thankfully it was unloaded.
now when you had brought up this topic, Dale,
Hmm.
um, Molly had brought up the 1911 and
Ah,
two
yes.
world wars and Vietnam, and I just I have to reiterate this, Molly. The 1911 has jamming issues.
Are you sure? Just clean it.
Yes. Listen,
No, no, no. Listen, listen, listen. WD-40. Just whenever it jams, just like sprinkle in a little bit.
if if
It
you
just
put
pops
W
open.
if you put WD-40 on any weapon, I will shoot you. That is a sin in firearms. At least in my
uh,
book, it is a sin in firearms. I-
Is it actually bad for the gun, or is it just like not very unesthetic and like displeasing to people?
So WD-40 is a water displacement mechanism. It is not an oil.
Oh,
Oil is also a water displacement mechanism. However,
hey, it is oil if you're brave enough.
no, it is not. It is much closer to alcohol because it evaporates. So
Oh,
oh,
alcohol, uh, um, acetone, things of things of that sort. It does evaporate, but its job is to get rid uh, of obstructions like dirt obstructions in things like hinges.
hmm,
But when you're working with a firearm, alcohol also display or WD-40 also displaces oils. And we're
hmm.
working with steel in this instance. Your your slide is quite literally milled steel. And so it is a ferrous metal, which means it has pores in it and it has to be oiled. if you push oil out of the metal, it is much more susceptible to rust.
And Molly, I would just recommend you check out the GIF I posted in the stream chat. You may appreciate
All
it.
right, but can I say something?
Yes.
So I haven't found the price of a license so far, but I did find one thing, which is price of bullets.
Mm-hmm.
Give your guesses what you think a price of a 9 by, let me see what, let's say 9 by 19 millimeter. What do you think the price is?
Okay, so
20
9
bucks.
millimeter Luger.
Yeah, per bullet. This is for one bullet.
$1.
Yes,
No. Well,
Mm.
I was
it's
gonna
a
go
dollar.
higher than that.
What's the
Damn.
price per bullet like in the US?
Um, you're generally looking for around $30 for 50 rounds.
Oh,
Hmm.
not
Oh,
that
hey,
bad, but still
it's
could probably be
Luna.
better.
Hello, Luna. How are you?
Hello,
Hello.
Luna. If you're trying to say anything, we currently can't hear you.
Is okay. Once she gets it fixed, we will give it another test.
All right.
I'm sure her setup is being
Set up.
temperamental.
Oh,
Yes, the
Uh,
her setup is being set up. Yes.
exactly. It words can have multiple meanings. Well, at least in English. I'm not sure about Serbian.
okay, so oh yes, I forgot. We have Walther elitists. Um, and
Is Walther a good the I think it's what the PP7 Walther or PPK?
yeah,
Is that a
that
reasonably decent gun?
the PPK is James Bond's handgun.
Right.
It's generally known to be a 380 ACP and fire subsonic. At least that's what you're supposed to fire if you want to look like James Bond, because he always carries a suppressor on him, and suppressors always make things subsonic. So, well, not always, but they do by way of trapping gases.
Hmm.
Because when a bullet exits a firearm, there's still gases pushing it.
But what's when you say subsonic, you mean it would be? Does that mean it would be slower or faster?
Slower than the speed of sound.
Are normal rounds faster than the speed of sound?
Yes.
So one thing I've been curious about, wouldn't like a suppressor kind of makes the barrel longer, but wouldn't you have more time for the gases to be pushing the bullet fat like with said longer barrel, wouldn't you have more time for the gases to transmit their acceleration into the bullet and make it go faster?
Uh, Rephrase that.
All right, so at least to my understanding, like there's an explosion that initially propels the bullet out of the barrel. And
Yeah.
wouldn't having more time, like a longer barrel that um have more energy that could be transferred from the explosive force to into the bullet to make it go faster? And also, isn't a suppressor kind of like extending the length of the barrel?
No, a suppressor doesn't extend the length of the barrel. I'll
Oh.
I'll explain this in depth. So the first thing that happens when you strike the 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 round or the cartridge is the firing pin strikes what's called the primer.
Mhm.
And what happens is there's a little gel capsule inside the primer area. And when you strike the primer, it crushes that capsule. And that gel comes out and it reacts with the gunpowder that's in the cartridge that causes it to explode. Now, when it does, that's when the magic happens. These rounds are designed for certain situations. Now, a normal 9x19 or 9mm Luger or 9mm Parabellum is generally designed to fire at supersonic speeds, and everything that makes that happen is the type of gunpowder that you're using. Is it give me a second. Is it slow burning or is it fast burning gunpowder? Slow burning gunpowder is best used for things like rifles because it allows all of the gunpowder to actually catch uh, to actually explode, and it creates much more pressure in the barrel to propel the bullet faster and faster and faster. Um, some some uh, some cartridges use some handgun cartridges use slow burning powder, um, and some use fast burning powder. Fast burning powder, um, it doesn't get all of the powder burnt or exploded as the bullet is leaving the chamber, and oftentimes this will leave you with a subsonic round,
Oh.
which is primarily so that you can protect your hearing, because after the explosion, the next loudest part is the bullet breaking the sound barrier.
Mhm.
Um, so most cartridges, yes, absolutely use fast burning powder or slow burning powder to build up that pressure, make the round supersonic. Uh, and then rounds like what you'd use if you want to protect your hearing, subsonic with a suppressor on a threaded barrel. Now, as for the extending the length of the barrel uh, with a suppressor, you're not extending the length of the barrel. You're actually creating a tunnel in which the bullet can continue to travel, but all of those gases that were propelling the bullet forward are
Mhm.
actually trapped inside
Oh.
inside the suppressor. There's what's called baffles, and they're designed in such a way that you trap gas, and they also mitigate sound as pressure drops and pushes backwards back towards the action of the firearm,
Oh.
which uh, was one of the things that SIG had to work on when they first designed their new infantry rifle for the military.
Mhm.
That rifle was designed specifically, or I should say, the suppressor was designed specifically so that the blowback of the gases into the operator's face is completely mitigated. By the time the gases could reach the operator's face, they're completely gone.
Huh. That is useful. But so then a suppressor is more than it's more complicated than just basically like a tube that you connect to the end of the barrel. It has
Yes.
like stuff in it. I see.
Yes. Um. Now, we've spent about 50 minutes on firearms,
Mhm.
and I think, Molly, we're going to get to your on the ground reporting next week, because I think
Right.
this is I think this is a good time to segue into um our next topic.
Oh, sorry.
Huh?
I had a
Yep.
question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Can you explain hot loads to us? Because I don't think Dale knows, and neither do I know properly
Hot
what a hot load is.
hot loads are
Sounds very NSFW.
Yes, it is.
in the world of firearms, a hot load refers to uh, how much pressure the cartridge is designed to create in the chamber.
Ah.
Um, the hotter the load, the more pressure it creates, and the weapons that you're going to use, at least in handguns, have to be rated for the pressure that you're going to exert on the chamber. For instance, throughout the 90s, uh, most handguns were rated for plus P ammunition, which is a fairly hot or a fairly high pressure uh, load, but it is not the highest. Then came the 2010s, and especially the late 2010s, we started designing weapons to take higher pressure loadout. Um, and those are generally, at least in 9mm ammunition, designated uh, plus P plus,
Mm.
because
Mm-hmm.
they are a higher chamber pressure loadout than the plus P.
I see.
Okay.
Well, with that, we'll probably segue into our next topic.
Yes. We had an interesting, um, an interesting, uh, what is it? A Twitter's Spaces or Twitter
Yeah.
Spaces this week,
Yes.
hosted by a Twitter user that goes by 9mm SMG. Uh, I will preface these clips. Um,
So that's
I I will preface these clips by saying that um oh, that doesn't even fit there. Okay, that's fine. Um, I'll preface this by saying, at the time that these clips were taken out of the uh, the spaces, the the four people that were on were talking about multiple situations. I believe the first situation was, should a felon. Oh,
what the hell?
I think that's Luna.
Is this
Um,
Morse code?
no, Luna, we're getting static.
Yeah. It reminded me of back when dial-up was a thing.
It sounded
Yeah.
like dubstep.
Um. So the first one was, should felons get the right to carry back? And it was proposed uh through a scenario of, a rapist, um uh a rapist has gotten out of jail, he's served his time, uh would it be ideal to give him his rights back? And we're talking about the lowest of the low, the least common people in society.
Yeah.
And ideally, these people shouldn't have even gotten out of jail. They should have been killed on the spot. But in reality, I have to disagree with the hosts of that Twitter Spaces, because now the world is dangerous for them, and they've been released. They have their life back, even though they have a high chance of
Recidivism.
of recidivism. The fact is, they are now no different than any other human in the country. It is just as dangerous for them, and possibly even more dangerous, because they are a sex offender, and people get these lists of sex offenders, and people start coming and looking for fights. It
Mhm.
happens. Um, the second one was someone is plagued with schizophrenia. Should should they be allowed a firearm? And
Hey, real quick, checking to see if my mic's working.
yes,
It
it
is.
is. Hello, Luna. Give everyone give it up for Luna. She is back. Say hello to the audience, Luna.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
We have our resident from the non-existent state of Ohio.
Damn, I had something for this. Oh, well, but yep, here I
Um,
come from the nothingness. It's that radio signal that came from space that we don't know where it is. That's Ohio.
The
okay.
wow signal.
Yep.
The
Wow.
the 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 Morse code, the dubstep Morse code that we heard earlier. Uh,
Yep. The place that no one likes so much, we have the most astronauts trying to leave Earth.
um, so the second topic was, someone plagued with schizophrenia. Should they be allowed a firearm? And I still say yes. Um,
Yeah.
I mean, I was
If they're not suffering from a psychotic break, they're still like in reality, then they're not much more likely to commit violence than anyone else is.
well, and here I stand as an anarchist living in this country, and so I have to think pragmatically. If this person has not been uh if this person has not been adjudicated mentally defective by a court, and they haven't been forcibly institutionalized by a court, which means there is no court record, yeah, yeah, we should sell to them. The world is just
Mhm.
as dangerous for them as it is for us. Now, that's not to
Likely
say.
more so because a lot of them face like they're a lot less likely to be in situations where they can like they're a lot less more likely to be poor and in areas where the violent crime rate is higher than say more
Mhm.
wealthy individuals.
Yes. Um and the simple fact of the matter is, in this country you cannot strip someone of their rights without due process, and that due process requires court records. There has to be a paper trail in the court to remove someone's right. And then we moved on to this subject. Now, throughout this entire time that the three people that I'm going to bring up here were talking, the first two subjects they answered according to what was pragmatic, what they think is pragmatic in this country and it under our laws.
And
But
what was that? So they were in favor of those two groups having their rights restored to them, or were they opposed to that?
they uh, uh, I believe someone the second one there was more nuance. The first one they were opposed to uh to restoring the person's rights, and I can understand their argument. I really can. But the third one is the the topic that has been a fight for me since the end of March, and that's the should trans people be sold firearm. And I know that me and Luna have some very, very strong feelings about this, don't we?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure if anyone's seen my Twitter, they've seen pretty much everything that I advocate for. I mean, hell, even look at my bio. It has I'm like pro LGBTQ 2A, and just all the I'm one of my most frequently posted images. I will say is something. I think it says gun rights are trans rights, and then has a QR link to the catalog.
Yes.
Hmm.
I have that picture saved several times over in my Google Photos.
I
Um
usually have that, and I've had to use one before where it's the FGC 9 with the trans flag on it, and it's just got keep thinking about my dick.
yes, I have that as
Nice.
well. Um so the first person in this audio clip that I'm going to play for everyone, this is the host of the Twitter space, 9mm SMG,
Oh
and
God.
about halfway through comes Brandon Herrera. Now we all know at this point that Brandon Herrera is extremely transphobic, even towards people that agree with him politically that are trans, of which I am uh, friends with a group of trans women on Twitter that hold many similar political opinions to Brandon. Um, so I don't generally have issues discussing these things, but when it comes to people like Brandon, they lack all forms of nuance. And when it comes to their blind spots, like firearms, it is a rules for thee, not for me. And so here's the clip.
That's the issue. I agree with you guys that mental health checks are bad because they can easily be used against us or anyone for whatever political reason. But I think my most controversial tweet of all time was probably after the Nashville shooting. Um, I basically said if I were a gun shop owner, and I'm going to lose followers for this, I don't really care, and someone with gender dysphoria came in, I'm talking clearly a man. I don't need to check their genitals to find out. Am I going to sell them a gun? And the trans community right now is very angry and increasingly violent. Now, as a private business owner and private shop owner, should I be forced to sell this person a gun because I feel they're high risk?
You use the magic word.
Okay, so before I get into Brandon's response,
Yeah. I just want to point one thing out that the
Mhm.
criteria of I will not sell to a trans person unless they pass is a somewhat absurd concept. Like
Like,
your criteria for selling them a gun is solely whether they pass or not.
I have a question though.
Yeah, go ahead.
Right.
Who determines who passes well enough? Like, you know,
Very
I
subjective. It'd be a very
it's
subjective thing. I
it
guess.
is very subjective.
Yeah.
By the way, Luna, in the general chat, Stoner has uh complimented you. Um that aside, um before I go on to Brandon, I say yes, you should still sell them a firearm. Because again, we have talked ad nauseum about the fact that gun store owners, FFLs, are more than likely right wing. I mean, I have never seen a left wing firearms store ever. Now, some people would argue Walmart and Gander Mountain, um, stores like that. We're not talking big box stores. We're talking local FFLs, local firearms licensed dealers. They are pretty much all right wing, some of them a little bit more libertarian, some of them more a little bit authoritarian. Um, so you are going to be hard up to find anyone left wing, authoritarian, or libertarian, or anarchist selling firearms in this country. I mean, you could probably find private sellers, but it's doubtful that you'll find an FFL that holds political opinions that would allow you, in essence, to purchase a firearm from them. So let's go ahead and move on to Brandon's little diatribe.
Then I actually live in an area that's super rare. We have a local FFL. They sell across the country, but their main like one of their main areas is located here. Uh, Basically, like I think they have two gun shops, but they're locally owned. Uh, I remember one of my roommate, who's also trans, was talking to them about the fact of, like, after all this recently has happened, places talking about making it illegal for trans people to buy firearms and using like mental health as their reasoning. That this one of the, like, either like a manager or something like that at our local place was responding to her on how, even in his opinions, he's like, it's a breach of Second Amendment rights for everyone. Like, the fact that they're trans should have nothing to do with their ability to own. I'm just saying this as, because you were talking about, you're really not going to find a lot of these, correct? Unless I'm misunderstanding. Yeah, so I can at very least confirm that, from my little, like, very kind of pinpoint view so far of like FFL locations, then they're one of the few that I would have to say that would even do that.
Well, and that's where we get to the more pragmatic right right wing libertarian. Um, I've met a lot of right wing libertarians on Twitter that, even though they disagree with a an ideology, they agree everyone should still have the ability to own and carry. And part of that ability to own and carry is someone selling a firearm to you. Um,
Yes.
which, I've been having that argument since Thursday with a bunch of people that think Cassandra McDonald isn't part of the media. Uh, Newsflash for anyone that thinks Tim Pool and his employees are not part of the media. You've got another thing coming, because they are part of the media. They're just not part of the old school media. They are
Yeah,
still
that's
media.
the new.
Okay, so here's Brandon's response, and it is the dumbest thing I have ever heard.
No, I do not think you should be forced to sell them a gun. It's just like the gay, wedding cake fiasco. This just seems to me like basic freedom of association. And if it is your object that you want to sell them, it is, it is your facility that you're selling it from. You have the right to do business with who you wish to do business with, who you don't want to do business with. That is up to your ability to decide. This is freedom of association. You have that freedom. and the government cannot come in and make you sell a deadly weapon to somebody that you do not discern as worthy of that, or capable of handling that responsibility, unless of course it's Operation Fast and Furious, in which case they may force you to do that directly to the cartel and then immediately lose all records of said purchase.
Okay, so that was Brandon Herrera, and I'm sure Luna may have picked up on this, but what is the problem with his argument?
So obviously he's basing this off of the old signs of like we reserve right to refuse service to anyone. But the fact that he's comparing selling a firearm to a trans person as basically equal to selling a firearm to a member of an organized criminal organization.
Actually,
Or
um,
Yeah,
converted.
I wouldn't necessarily say he was comparing them.
He's
I think that was just like a snide comment about about the
about
asinine Fast and Furious thing.
yes, about the government and Fast and Furious. His logic depends on his lacking knowledge of the lesbian wedding cake uh, Supreme Court case from Colorado.
Yeah,
Now, in this court case, the Supreme Court did rule in favor of the baker, but there were some extreme caveats to it. You do have freedom of association insofar as your personal life as a business owner. You have freedom of association to a very short extent in your business
yeah,
until it comes to custom services. And what I mean
yeah,
by custom services is decorating a custom cake.
yeah.
They come
Because
they come to you they come to you, they say this is the kind of cake I want, this is the flavor I want, this is the shape I want, this is how I want it decorated, because when they come to the baker at that point, there is no set price yet. There's negotiation, there's you know, there are certain things that have to be done. The baker has to figure out how much overtime is going to have to be put into it, how much time period it has to be put into it, how many people he needs for the labor, um, all of the cost of materials, the cost of overhead, cost of delivery, that adds up, and that's something that you just cannot set for a person that is just coming in right now asking for it.
Yeah, and it is worth noting in that masterpiece cake shop case, the baker offered to sell them pre-made cakes. He just said that he wasn't willing to make a custom-made cake for the wedding. He
Yes.
didn't
Now,
deny them service. He just denied one very specific type of service and went out of his way to offer other services
now,
instead.
when it comes to denying regular services to someone just walking in off the street, the Supreme Court made it very clear that they have to be someone that is causing some sort of disruption in your store. Most places have a no shirt, no shoes, no service. At least when it comes to convenience stores, food establishments, and this is for health reasons. Uh, because I mean, convenience stores have glass. You walk in and you've stepped on a piece of glass. You're barefoot. You're tracking blood around. Uh, you're not actually causing a disruption, but there is a risk to health. Uh, but people causing disruptions in a store, you can deny them service. Someone coming into the store and wanting to buy something that you have a set price for already, as long as they are not disruptive in their behavior, And clothing is not a behavior. There is no health code risk. There is no risk to health uh, with them being in the store. You are required by the government to sell to them, whether you like their group or not. Is
Here's a
everyone still there?
question
Okay.
for you. Do you think that that is right? Should the government be able to force you to sell to someone if you do not wish to sell to them?
Ideally, no.
Yeah.
Ideally, there should be gun store owners, bakers of all races and ethnicities and political persuasions, but that's not what we have in this country. And
Yeah.
so we are reliant on our local shops, to get these services. And if there is no competitor shop to the one that we've gone to that will service us, we have no choice. I mean, that's I used to take a very capitalist stance to this. If someone denies to bake a cake for you, start your own business in spite.
Mhm.
Get all of the business that they would refuse, and at some point the market will just run them out
Mhm.
because it's a peaceful protest by becoming a competitor to the person that wronged you.
Mhm.
Um but we don't live in an age where just any normal Joe Schmo can do that anymore. That's a very impractical stance. I I I know where I want to go, but I can't get there without being pragmatic with what we have along the way.
All right.
And what we have along the way is a government that recognizes you cannot compete in certain instances. And so that that uh that company, that store must service you so long as you're not being disruptive. Um your question about should the government be able to do so? That's where uh Eric from Iraq Veteran 8888 came in, because he came from a more idealistic stance.
I agree completely. It should be a business owner's right to conduct business in the manner they see fit with whoever they see fit and for whatever dang reason, yay or nay, as to whether or not they see fit. And also on the flip side, right? Okay, if there is someone who's whatever, it could be white, black, Jew, Christian, transgender, whatever. It doesn't matter. Whatever someone chooses to live their creed or their lifestyle, they can do business with whoever the heck they want, right? So if there's a Christian gun shop and there's a Jew gun shop in town and you're a Jew and you want to go buy a gun from a Jewish gun shop, well then by all means go buy it from the Jewish gun shop. Like no one's, you conduct business however the heck you want to. So I'm very much, you know, I like the enterprise of owning a small business. It's such an enjoyable thing to run a small business, right? To be your own boss, to make your own hours, to live your life the way you want, to conduct your business. And I noticed Phoenix is on here, like Phoenix Ammo. Like I got a lot of respect for those guys that they do things the way they want. They don't let anybody dictate how they do business. They do business the way they want, and I think that it's one of the most quintessential American traits of American enterprise is that we conduct ourselves with whatever amount of morals or principles we want to wear on our sleeve publicly in our company, or what we don't want to wear on our sleeve in public in our company. I think it's up to every individual business to decide how they conduct themselves, and I'm here for it. Whatever they decide to do, I back them up.
Okay, so that's Eric from Iraq Veteran 8888. And as you can see, he does take a more idealistic stance. Real quick, Stoner, yes, big gun tubers are becoming more and more anti-transgender nowadays, and it was the scales were tipped because of the Nashville shooting. But Eric missed the logical pitfall again when he brought up Phoenix Ammunition. Phoenix does not sell to government agencies, and part of the reason is because they've gone pretty much minarchist. They're teetering pretty heavily on that line between anarchist and libertarian. And when these agencies like police departments, federal agencies, when they come to them and ask for their services, there is no set standard. There is no set price because you know they're trying to order things in bulk. And Phoenix Ammunition, while they do sell ammunition in bulk, they don't sell ammunition in bulk to the volume that these agencies are asking for. So there's no set price, and that gives Phoenix the ability to refuse their service right off the bat. They don't have to give time and resources to these people because these people are requesting a custom service. Anyone's thoughts?
I would tend to agree, and I didn't know that Phoenix Ammunition does not sell to the government, and I'm very much for that. And I personally fall more into the idealist position on this, in that I think it should. I think it very much should be like voluntary association. The principle of voluntary association is one of the most important rights we should have, as you don't really have any rights outside of the ability to choose whether or not you want to associate with anyone. But I definitely see where you're coming from with it's it's not the world we live in, unfortunately, and we operate. It is not there is it does not operate in that capacity. So I very much understand that the real world is not the ideal world, unfortunately. Um,
Yes,
and with
go ahead.
oh, and I just want to say, and with that, unfortunately, compromises on our rights have to be made. For the time being, at least. Hopefully, that will change, but it hasn't yet. So we have to deal with what is, not with what we want it to be.
Well, and with all of that, I come back to what I had prefaced this with to begin with, is that yeah, everyone, even business owners, should be able to dictate who they associate with. But because there is so much of a right-leaning slant and an authoritarian slant in that when it comes to firearms ownership in the 2A community, at least when it comes to FFLs, it's impractical to think that you should be allowed to deny someone service simply because they look like a man and they walk in wearing a dress. How How do you know? How do you know that this is not someone that transitioned from female to male, grew a beard, and now they're trying to detransition? How do you know? How do you know? You don't.
Right.
And therein lies the elitism in it all. They think they're better. They think that they have the right to dictate what you do. They think that there are groups that they are better than, and that because they hold this position of power, they get to tell you, yes, you get to exercise your rights, or no, you don't get to exercise your rights. And Luna has taken her mute off.
It is on push to talk now.
Oh, well, no, it's fine. You don't have to push to talk. I want to hear from you. I want to hear the anger.
No, I'm not doing that because of that. I have someone else in the room.
Oh, okay.
Hello to the someone else.
Yes, hello to the someone else in the room.
They can't hear you. I have headphones.
Oh.
That's fine. And Stoner just brought up a good point. What if it's just a really ugly woman that looks butch? Which kind of brings us into something that Dale sent to the chat today. Let me pull it up.
Oh, I've always found that like the whole oh, I'm going to be transphobic of you because you don't pass also usually tends to come from people and from like perspectives that are misogynistic as well.
So Dale put this in the chat today, and I thought it would play in very well with what we're talking about. A lesbian cisgender woman is escorted out of the women's bathroom by police because a Karen called the cops on her thinking she was a man. Bathroom transvestigations are only about enforcing gender conformity, nothing else. Let's watch this.
No ID. This is a girl, and you guys are harassing her because she's a dyke.
And I'm a man. I'm a fucking female.
This is a girl.
Do I have to tell you again?
You have ID?
No, I do not.
Get out. Get out. Get out. You got no ID? Get out.
This is so sad.
Out.
Oh, and she's a girl, and you're yelling in her face. That's crazy. Don't worry, I got you. I got
Put hands on
you.
me again, bro.
Wow, look what you. Oh, okay.
Get out, sir. Get out.
Man.
That is the fucking girl.
I'm a fucking
That is the girl.
Let's go.
Time to
Let's
go.
go. You have no ID? Let's go.
Time to go, sir.
So you're saying you have to have an ID to go to the bathroom?
Get out of my
Hey,
face.
Go.
you can all leave if you want to.
We are all leaving. Like I said, this is a girl. Don't put your hands on a girl.
Let's go. Come on. No ID.
That's
Let's go.
fucking. I don't.
I don't know about anyone else, but while looking butch, she definitely looked fucking female to me. What about you?
Yep. I would say she looked on the female and the female side of androgynous. Most like I could see I'm not necessarily going to see a reasonable person, but I could see a person misidentifying her. But once again, I excluded the term reasonable for a reason.
Yes, probably because we've talked about reasonable articulable suspicion
Exactly.
when it comes to police.
Yes. And I don't think there is a standard by which you have to ID yourself to a police officer to use a public bathroom. I
No,
do
there
not
is.
believe that standard exists, even if this is a state that has passed some of those laws.
Yeah, well, and if it is a state that has passed one of those laws, the standard must be reasonable, articulable suspicion. They have to believe that you have, are currently, or are about to commit a crime,
Mhm.
which means
And
they,
like,
but before they can even take action, they have to have that reasonable, articulable suspicion. They don't in this case, simply because all they're going off of is a call from a woman that watched this woman enter the bathroom. That's all they had. There is nothing beyond that. And you, by standards of reasonable articulable suspicion, you have to have two objective facts in order to detain someone. Two objective facts that would lead a reasonable person to believe that this individual is currently, or is about to commit a crime. They only have one, and that's a call.
so the call itself can count as one of those facts?
It can count as one of those facts. Say, for instance, you're walking uh, through downtown at night. It's not a bad neighborhood. It's not a neighborhood known for crime around the area.
Mhm.
You're walking in downtown at night. There's tons of people around. You're just walking around. Say you're trying to get exercise, and someone thinks you're weird simply because they've seen you walk by a few times. You're not interacting with anyone, you're not looking inside of buildings, you're not doing jack squat but walking. Say, you're trying to get exercise. They call the police come out, they see you, they stop you. Now that in and of itself is a detainment because they have only I mean, it's an illegal detainment because they only have a phone call saying that you're walking around. They have done no investigation, no question asking of the person that has called in, what behaviors you're exhibiting. What would lead them, or lead a reasonable person to believe that you're committing a crime. They the call in and of itself can be used as an objective fact because someone did think that you're suspicious. Two calls doesn't equal two objective facts. They are
Right.
still part of one fact.
Yeah, that someone called.
Now, what they could do is, if they see you, they can watch you from afar. They can't really interact. I mean, they can ask if you'd like to talk to them. That's a that's what's called a consensual conversation.
Yeah, but you can refuse.
But you can refuse and you can keep walking. No, I'm
Uh,
sorry. I don't want to talk to you.
Can they use your appearance as one of those facts?
No.
Assume.
They
Oh, all right.
they cannot use your appearance. This has to be based upon your behavior. It has to be two objective facts about behavior that you are exhibiting. Say, for instance, I know I've used this in the past. I'm walking downtown. It's 3 a.m. in the morning, and I've got a video camera and I'm looking inside the windows to a storefront. There are several objective facts that would lead a person to reasonably assume that I am, that I have, am currently, or are about to commit a crime. First objective fact, it's extremely late at night. So late that it's morning time. No one's out. Drinking, last call was an hour and a half ago.
Mhm.
So everyone's already home. So that's objective fact number one. Number two, I'm looking inside storefronts. And I have a video camera. So there's 2 and 3. That's where things get a little bit dicey for you. When you're walking out there, you have exhibited what would generally be considered reasonable articulable suspicion for them to stop, detain, and identify you.
So at that point, they can legally request your ID, and you have to give it.
In certain states, yes. For instance, Texas.
Mhm.
Texas has. Let me start from the beginning. Terry versus Ohio, 1967.
Mhm.
This is what established reasonable articulable suspicion. And that is the bare minimum to get an identification from anyone in the United States. That is the bare minimum that all police agencies have to abide by. When it comes to some states, they make law enforcement go further before they can forcefully obtain your identification. In Texas Penal Code 38.02 says that they can detain you upon reasonable articulable suspicion, but they cannot identify you legally without them arresting you. And the whole idea of this separation is to make sure that they do a proper investigation in between the time that they detain you and the time that they arrest you.
Right.
So that's that for when it comes to this lesbian in uh the bathroom that she was supposed to go into in the first place, assuming that this is one of the states that has passed a bathroom law.
I don't think it mentioned what state that was in, but
No,
it could be
I've been
reasonably.
looking.
It's definitely could be reasonably determined that it is a bathroom law state.
Let's take a look here. Well, I mean, there are states that have laws where it would generally be considered illegal for a man to enter a woman's bathroom because the assumption is they're in there to do something lewd or lascivious.
Yeah.
But when it comes to trans people like myself, I'm going in the bathroom to fucking pee. I'm not in there to do anything else. And so I avoid bathrooms in public.
Yeah. Also, I'd just like to note, I avoid bathrooms in public as well, just because they tend to be disgusting. Like, you don't want to go in there if you don't have to. They're filthy. Just as a side note.
let's see. I'm trying to figure out where this happened.
Mhm.
Um, North Carolina.
So of course that's the one famous for that bathroom law.
A blogger recently posted a
Yeah,
video of a
here's the Young
lesbian woman
Turks.
being harassed by police officials in a bathroom. Apparently, these police officials didn't believe that she was a woman. Take a look.
Yeah.
This is a girl, and
So-
you guys are
So this is the video that we just watched.
Yeah.
It looks like there's a bit more at the front of it.
harassing her because she's a dyke.
And I'm the bad. I'm the fuck.
Okay. Yeah, that's pretty much where we picked up on everything. Does look very feminine to me. So, I mean, what do you want? She's a lesbian.
Yes.
And as we're talking about the LGBTQ community, as I had mentioned to Luna before, I have friends that are right wing. I'm in a chat group with people who are heavily right wing. Most of them lean extremely libertarian. They hold somewhat less nuanced views on things like childhood transition than I do.
Mhm.
But I also understand where they're coming from, and I try to push the conversation into a more nuanced discussion. However, there has been some elitism that's grown into this group of people, especially trans people, especially passing trans people. And this is kind of why I dislike Blair. Not that she's actually exhibited any elitism insofar as saying who can and can't identify as transgender or transsexual, however they want to label themselves.
Mhm.
But there were a bunch of us on Twitter that found each other because of another person we associate with that was having a gun debate a couple weeks ago. And we were all happy to be part of this. We set our differences aside. The bar was set at you must be diagnosed with gender dysphoria from one of the earlier DSM models. DSM 4 or earlier, because the DSM 5 is extremely broad and it can lead a parent with Munchausen's by proxy to transition their child, which, if their
Right.
child isn't actually trans, can be damaging. That's part of the nuance that I'm trying to push the discussion in.
Yeah, because it
Um,
kind of, at least to me, kind of seems like having a trans kid has become the new fashion accessory for the awfuls, and by that I mean the affluent white female liberals.
yes,
Like,
and
it's a status symbol among.
a lot of people are looking at parents when most of those people should be actually looking at the doctors. But let's move past that specifically into the elitism. So all of us had been diagnosed with gender dysphoria, or in an even earlier model of the DSM, or an earlier version of the DSM, gender identity disorder.
Mhm.
And with that came the understanding that we are all trans. There is no bar that you have to follow further than that. Someone apparently spoke out of turn. I'm not going to mention any names,
Mhm.
but someone spoke out of turn, and several of the passing girls in this group got extremely upset with her, even though she was speaking on behalf of herself and not for anyone else. And even when she conceded the argument, they continued to bully her. And herein lies the issue with bullying. It creates extremists. The bullying itself was the exhibition of elitism. It's the entire reason why today's episode is about elitism in communities. Up until, just a few days ago, I personally thought the groups that I was in was immune from elitism. We all understood, we all have somewhat different opinions in politics. We all understand that we have different opinions on rights, but we all agreed on one major thing. And then these passing trans girls decided to shift the goalpost to not only do you have to be diagnosed, but you have to, in your personal life, be taking social and medical transition. Like you must at least be in the process of this. And I know
Even if
for
you're like, is that also even if you're not in a situation where that's possible? Like, there are
well,
some people who are in a situation where even if they want to, but they can't.
and that was this person's issue was she has a father who's uh ridden with dementia, and it would be absolute torture to put him through that. And so I mean she was also concerned with her children not being able to understand her transition. And I think to a point I got through to her that children don't need to understand transition. Children need to understand that their parent is happy and healthy. That's what kids need to understand. They can learn about the nuances of what happened later on in their life when they're capable of understanding it. But when they're young, the important part is making sure that their parent is happy and healthy, because that's the best environment for a child to be in, regardless of whether their parent identifies with the sex that they were born as or not. The parent needs to be happy and healthy. Um, but it would be torture to her father to see her go through transition, because he already has a hard time recognizing anyone. I mean, there's days that he doesn't even know who he is.
Hmm.
And the doctors had said, he'll likely pass within 3 years, and so she was taking steps uh to socially and hormonally transition, but it was a 3-year path for her to do so, and I understood that. But some of the others didn't, and I railed extremely hard against these girls over it, but they didn't stop. And because they didn't stop, she threw the entire idea of transitioning out the window and has now started touting the talking points of Matt Walsh.
Hmm. That's an interesting switch.
Well, and that's what bullying does. When you reason with a person and you're nice to them, you explain what's going on, they are more likely to listen to you. But when you push them so far that you deny them access to a word, to a label, whether currently or in the future, they're going to see that path as being inaccessible now, and they're going to go the opposite direction. And the opposite direction in this case was Matt Walsh. And so I'm extremely angry. And it's not specifically Blair's fault, but these are the type of people that Blair attracts. Vain people that think they get to control anything and everything about the space that they occupy. Personal space, they get to dictate.
All right.
Public space, not a fucking chance.
Mm-hmm. Let me ask you this though, because do you believe that it's not necessarily for trans community, but just a community in general, should have some forms of objective standards?
Yes, there should always be objective standards.
And if that is the case, should that should that community be able to self-police to uphold those objective standards to make sure they don't fall away?
To an extent.
All right. Because,
When
like, sorry?
when we're talking about policing your own, like we did in the Marine Corps,
Mhm.
it's best to do so in a fashion where you reason with them. Don't
Mhm.
bully them.
All right.
Some people respond well to bullying. I saw it happen
Mhm.
all the time in the Marine Corps, but a lot of people do not respond well to bullying, and it can actually cause people who need to be very agile, very dominant in their public lives to become very docile and submissive in their public lives. And that's an issue.
Then, do you think also that if we have established that it is important to have some objective standards in a community and to self-police for those, do you think then that if there is an individual in said community who continuously does not uphold those objective standards, it is then okay to throw them out of that community
It
or
is
to tell
okay
them you're not one of us, basically?
it is okay to throw them out of that specific community via an explanation of you're not upholding our standards. These are acts that go against our code of conduct, uh, and leave it at that. So that we're not taking the label from you. We're just not allowing you in our community any longer.
All right. And because the reason I bring this up is because I actually have a bit of experience witnessing this in two separate community or subcultures I am part of. The first being the metal subculture. Now, I grew up when I was younger. The standards governing the metal community, there were some like it was edgy, right? It's okay to be edgy. It's
Mm-hmm.
like you can say offensive things. You can say like it's like punk in that way, right? It's countercultural. And that was the standard from like the inception of the metal community until the like mid 2015. in the mid 2010s, when we begin to let in, and I know this is a politically charged term, but when wokeness began to kind of rear its ugly head in some parts of the metal community, up to a point where, and I'll just give you a quick example. There is a band. It's the most famous death metal band in the world, and it's called Cannibal Corpse. The lead singer of Cannibal Corpse is George. His nickname is Corpse Grinder, but it's George Corpse Grinder Fisher.
I think I know what you're getting at.
Yeah, Corpse Grinder is an immense fan of the game World of Warcraft, and because of that, the creators of World of Warcraft actually made a character named George the Corpse Grinder. Now, for the entirety of he did an infamous interview like 15 years ago where there are two sides on World of Warcraft. There's the Alliance and the Horde. He was given an interview where he said something essentially, I don't want to play no homo alliance. And he called them gay, which is a thing in the metal community. Nothing against gay people. It's just, it's a term they use to kind of mean weak and feminine. And that's what he said. Now, this was 15 years ago. And a bunch of articles came out from the various big metal publications condemning him for it, right? And it led to the point where World of Warcraft actually removed his character and replaced it with a different one. Now, this is a man who sings for a living about murder, rape, genocide. The least offensive thing he has said in the last 15 years was that the Alliance is gay, right? He sings death metal, right? If you can't be offensive and edgy in death metal, like, this would never have happened, in my opinion, if we self-policed our own enough to keep that, like, new generation of fucking, like, emotionally fragile pussies out of the community, like we've been doing.
This is a dude who has songs that are literally named things like I have 100 weapons in my home and they're for murder, or I have skulls in my house.
All right, so there is one song that I'm going to give you just to show what type of things are sung about. I am not entirely sure I can say this on YouTube, so I will say it in a different way. All right, it's one word. The first part of that word is necro. You know, like necro, like, I don't know, necro. The second part of that word denotes, it's a word that starts with P and ends with file.
Okay.
And that is the type of lyrics that they have. And to be cancelled simply because he went on a rant about how he didn't like the Alliance in a video game and that he'd rather play the bad guys is, in my opinion, cultural degeneration or cultural degradation of that community. And with a healthy form of self-policing, that would have never happened.
Yes, I would agree. We are actually going to carry on this discussion in the after hours. For any of our audience watching this on YouTube, you can see I have a tweet pulled up of which we will also be discussing in after hours. If anyone is interested, the Minds site will be up this coming week. It will be up before Saturday, likely around the Tuesday time frame. And that will be where you can see and listen to the After Hours show. So with that, I would like to take it back to everyone's goodbyes. I'm going to start with Molly. Go ahead and say goodnight to our lovely audience.
Hello, 99th.
And then I will go to our non-existent trans friend from Ohio. Go ahead.
Remember, everyone, I'm in your walls.
Yay.
And we will finish with our resident Canuckistani, Dale.
Good night, everyone. Au revoir.
Au revoir.
Bye-bye.
And I will go ahead and put on the music for our audience, and we are out.